first, I want to go directly to our guest for hour number one today. She has been on the channel here before, from my understanding. She is a investigative journalist. She has written a lot of pieces lately, not only about the COVID-19 or Kung Flu, however you want to look at it, but also the topic of George Floyd is in her wheelhouse as well. So let me welcome Maryam Henein to the show. Maryam, how is your Thursday?
Howdy. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. You are 5 by 5. How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm just actually looking at an update from the George Floyd case. And I'm sure as you guys are navigating so much information, trying to keep up on top of all that is going on. And I don't ever miss POTUS speaking. So I'm also going to be tuning in to that speech after this.
Absolutely. First, again, let me thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us. For people that may not be familiar with you, do you want to get a little bit of background to Patriot Nation before we get into this?
Absolutely. So my name is Maryam Henein, and I am an investigative journalist for the past 25 years. And I'm best known for directing a documentary called Vanishing of the Bees about the global bee disappearances that really opened my eyes to big ag and big pharma. I am a certified functional medicine consultant and coach, so I see things through the lens of functional medicine. I've been covering censorship and a term I've popularized called technofaschism since last year, specifically looking at Google and YouTube, which is how I then met Zach Voorhees, who's a partner in crime, the Google whistleblower, and then really got introduced to patriots. I used to think that I was a Democrat and liberal. I hail from Montreal, Canada, and they're not seemingly fighting for freedom of speech or medical freedom. And my focus, I do a lot on vaccine safety, and I've been covering the coronavirus since January, beginning of January. And Zach and I did a man on the street, which made me sense that things were going down, having covered Samoa and witnessing 200,000 people mass vaccinated, and also speaking to an Ebola whistleblower. And I'm now reporting from the jungle of Costa Rica, where the pandemic also is being ushered in. And you see, it's a good way to see how it's the same playbook, different country, all over. So that's, yeah, I've been nonstop covering 10 hours a day, every day for the past 8 months on the coronavirus.
Wow, you talk about real dedication there. Before we get into both the coronavirus, which I know is in your wheelhouse, along with George Floyd, like you mentioned, at what stage of your life did you realize that investigative journalism was your calling?
That's a good question. I graduated from Concordia in Montreal, and I studied communications at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver. But prior to that, I had graduated college with business administration, and then I applied for journalism. I've always been writing in my journal, and I was a nerd, a chubby nerd in growing up. And in fact, I got rejected from journalism because they only accept 200 people into the program. And I wrote to the dean and I said, you don't understand, if I don't get accepted into journalism, I'm not going to go to university. This is all I want to do. And I was part of the mainstream. And I like to remind that to people because I wrote for The Hollywood Reporter, Maxim, LA Magazine, LA Weekly, Penthouse, Black Book, and on and on. I worked for Channel 4 for MSNBC. I've been part of the internet wave from the get-go. I was covering technology for a short stint for the Ventura County Star. And when I came to America and got this job at MSNBC at Channel 4 in Burbank, I was kind of aghast at how they cover the news in the US compared to growing up getting world news and then seeing, wow, they spend like $1 million to put a chopper in the air during sweeps. Or there was a case, there was this one person early on, maybe you remember it. He basically shot himself on camera. He was he held up the traffic and he unfurled a banner regarding an HMO. He had HIV, and I saw how the channel handled the case. They kind of swept it under the rug, and eventually I quit. I was kind of disgusted with the way they cover news on the local level, and then started freelancing. So I would go to New York once a year, and most of the stories I wrote were stories that I pitched. And then after making the film, well, before making the film, I was hit by an SUV and dragged 50 feet, and I had to have a metal rod put in my leg and had to learn how to walk again. And I didn't have health insurance because I'm Canadian. And then slowly the mainstream kind of rejected me because I started covering big ag and big pharma, especially after making my film, which has been translated in many languages and is still relevant, because if you like to eat, you should care about the honeybees. And I tell people that we are the bees that are slowly being poisoned, now including genetically modified misinformation, disinformation. And as you know, William Casey, the CIA, said, our mission will have been accomplished when we cannot tell truth from lies. And I think it's fair to say we've arrived to that point now, because it's harder and harder to suss out truth. I see documents science papers disappearing in real time. As you know, YouTube takes its directives from World Health Organization, so arguably China. And it's interesting, as we just had those hearings at the Judiciary Committee. Too bad Jack wasn't present, but even though President Trump has brought it to light, it seems like it's getting worse. And, we witnessed all these Q accounts disappearing, the Frontiers doctors being censored for promoting HCQ, and anything that Orange Man plugs that the Democrats hate. And it's really sad to see, as someone who is, I think, liberal and believes in democracy. I don't see them fighting for our constitutional rights. And then also, as a truther, just entertain the possibility that it's all political theater and that there is a new world order. And that's hard to say. And I really look at what President Trump says, and there's days, when he says, he called out Big Pharma. I've never heard anyone else call out Big Pharma and say that he's not beholden to their lobby dollars. And then on the other hand, saying that he's going to use the military to mass vaccinate us, and hopefully it'll be voluntary. So that's really my focus, has been vaccine safety. And the mainstream media doesn't like that. So I hope that answers your question.
No, I think a lot of people on here know what censorship is. Within the last couple weeks, not only has the Patriot Soapbox Twitter account been suspended, but then one of the co-founders of the Patriot Soapbox, her personal account was suspended. Yeah, absolutely. So we know
it in real time happen, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. You don't think that would happen to you until it does happen. But interesting how you go from being in the mainstream media with NBC and then start covering topics that are serious, no-nos in that industry, and how quickly, you fall from that.
Yes, and then what I'm also part of Operation Quack Hack, which the FDA has a real operation called Quack Hack, which is an attack on natural remedies. And they say that anyone who's trying to profit, ironically, from the coronavirus, because I offer silver, vitamin C, none of these health experts, Fauci the fraud or Birx or these vaccine deep state assets ever talk about the immune system. The only person that I've heard say zinc is actually President Trump. And we know that he knows that we know that vaccines are, he's gone on record as early as 2012. So I've had 5 smear pieces written about me and by a George Soros backed publication, Media Matters, calling me a former journalist, calling me a YouTube personality. I wish. I mean, I have 4,500 followers because I was busy focusing, building my company. And also I was attacked for selling CBD oil. And I get, maybe 40 people. I'm so censored. I'm shadow banned on Twitter. I get thrown in Twitter jail. I can't see my count. They unfollow people. And I love Twitter because I'm constantly sharing in real time and creating threads, but Jack doesn't love us back. And it's like, it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable, the ushering in of communism and the divide and conquer. And I really think that the real virus is one of hate and one of fear. And we see it on my own Facebook post, my personal one. I'm trying to alleviate people from the fear and telling them, I also thought for a hot minute that the masks worked, but I'm beholden to the truth. Like when they ask me, who do you work for? When I call, I say, I work for God. I work for truth. Who cares who I work for? It doesn't matter because the mainstream doesn't care about what's truthful. They don't look beyond the surface. So when you go on my own Facebook page being called a racist, it's like, hey, I'm brown, by the way, or called a religious zealot when I'm not a religious zealot, or talking about me in the third person. It's just shocking because democracy is supposed to have conversation, and I'm fine to say I'm wrong or to recant something. And now it gets harder where you do sometimes accidentally share misinformation because of the nature of the world that we're living in. This is what they want. But they are prostitutes and they are parrots, and it's disgusting to be part. This is the industry that I graduated from.
Yeah, I can tell the disappointment in your voice because, when you went through to be a journalist, I'm sure you never would have thought that this would be the mud or everything else that has been thrown at you. And I want you to know with the Media Matters, we're in the same boat. There is an individual that is a journalist there that I think follows the show on a regular basis, and he writes a lot of hit pieces about it. So we're in the same boat when
Who
it
is
comes
it?
to,
Will? That's Daily.
that's my best friend. I'm glad you brought him up. No, it's not him. But
Eric something is the one who wrote the smear pieces on me.
Does his last name start with an H? Yes, that is him. Yes. But anywho, getting back, let's cover the Kung flu. That's what I call it here. What are some things, and it seems like to me you've had a lot of travels here within the last year or so around different parts of the world that are being affected by this Kung flu. What are some things or things that are being misled, obviously, in the media that you've been reporting on about the Kung flu?
Yeah, and reporting on it like for months now, The predictive models were wrong. They were funded by Billy Boy Gates. They estimated millions of deaths, and Fauci himself in the New England Journal of Medicine has said this is no less fatal than the flu. The numbers are bloated. The PCR test is not a diagnostic tool. It's not a diagnostic tool. The amount of false positives, and that's one of the things that frustrates me, because President Trump says often, and it makes sense even though they don't get it, the more people you test, the more positives. But he doesn't say the word false positives, which is too bad. And this charade, the masks, just the numbers, like as soon as the Florida opened up, or the states that happen to be red opened up, I was like, okay, let's see what happens. And of course, they hit us with these bloated fat numbers, classifying everything under the sun, bribing, pretty much incentivizing doctors and to put people on vents, and nobody looks at the specifics. And I keep saying this, that we live in an age of mediocrity, and the devil lies in the details. And so it's like, okay, you died of the Rona. I'm not disputing personally that there's a virus. I think there's several strains by now, and arguably maybe what was in Wuhan is not what's here. But 1 in every 2 people is sick. So if you're eating pizza and pizza sales have gone down, that is not the way to bolster your immune system. So, now they're talking about goggles. So by the time the election comes, maybe we're going to be hazmated out. They're scaring the people and dividing the people on so many fronts. The numbers are just not accurate. And any case of supposed death of coronavirus, like a couple of weeks ago, there was the 9-year-old in Putnam County, the youngest in Florida. So I make calls, and they told me it's coronavirus related. Okay, what does that mean? Even here in Costa Rica, there's 191 deaths, and they say coronavirus related. What does that mean? What does that mean? They can't tell me. They couldn't tell me. And then they say HIPAA. When in states like California, HIPAA, I say out the window, because things are on Zoom. And if you're wanting your drugs and you have to Zoom with your psychiatrist, they say straight up that your HIPAA, your information is not guaranteed to be private. So it's private when it's convenient. The nursing homes, I think there's a soft culling of deaths. I'm not denying that people are dying, but I call it COVID-19 death by default. And I think that they're targeting the low-hanging fruit, which is the homeless shelters, which is the prisons, which is the nursing homes, which is the Native American reservations, which is the Black lives, that they matter because they're public enemy number 1, conveniently. It's like the prisons. Okay, how did they get into the prisons? Through the plexiglass? Through the guards? Who are these prisoners that were released? Are they the ones that got recruited for these BLM riots? So there's just so much disinformation, and people, like, I've been attacked on my newsletter of like, how dare you, my so-and-so died and you seem flippant about death. Like, I almost died. Spoiler alert, we all die. We're not parading the numbers of cancer every day, or heart conditions, or looking at specifics. I mean, I've spoken to morticians off the record that have said that they've signed NDAs to classify it as a coronavirus. So there's lots of different ways. I've enrolled in their snitch program so that I can understand the psychology of how they're warping people's minds, that autonomy doesn't apply under the guise of safety and the greater good under the Rona. And it's like many people have said, Bill Gates has this COVID pass for travel. Well, I say it's COVID pass, like anything that you want, anything that these global elitists want, they're ushering in under the Rona. It's unfortunate, and I really want to know what we're going to do. Are we going to tweet ourselves to truth? Are these protests, these peaceful protests, not the riots, making a difference? How are we going to get our freedoms back?
Definitely, a lot of great questions there, and to do with the coronavirus. I mean, how is it that you can have one group of people that can, well, it's part of them, will peacefully protest, and then you have the other part that blend in, that riot and loot, and they're fine, no social distancing, no mask whatsoever. But then the media continually hammers President Trump for having a rally because that's going to be a super spreader. Do they think we are really that stupid that you have one group that is not social distancing, not wearing masks, and they're not going to be a super spreader at all? But this other group that is a right-wing fringe group, they're going to super spread it to everybody.
Yeah, John Hopkins, even Zach read me the article and we were cracking up. They were saying that social justice trumps social distancing. And it doesn't seem to be a problem. And I think we saw just a couple of days ago, Fauci stumbling when he was asked about the protests / riots. And, I found something very interesting. Zach went to Portland, and he noticed that there was like people can't go anywhere. They need an outlet to express their anger or outrage. It's summer. And he saw a lot of like festive, like artists, music. And he was talking about the revolution ribs. And he got slammed by the right. And I just find that such a poignant observation that he saw that also the right is fueling the fear, or saying that there's things going on and not covering the whole story, which made me want to go back to America and be boots on the ground to really see what's going on. Like, just like how people have, hey, we had a Black president for 8 years. This is a psyop. And I'm talking about George Floyd, and it was used, I feel from my research, to instigate a manufactured racial war. And now we have, the country burning, and it's very sad. How about that Black man who was holding a Trump sign and got murdered in broad daylight? How about his Black life? All this effing virtue signaling, like, oh, we're going to take Aunt Jemima off the cover, but we're going to keep the poisons in. You really care about Black lives or any lives? Why don't you put syrup in your syrup instead of omega-6s, inflammatory corn syrup that's genetically modified, that's making people sick? We have a sick society, and we're not telling people to take care of their immune system. No, we're muzzling them, which depresses their immune systems. We're keeping people at home. Did you see what now Australia? What's happening in Australia? I mean, they're doing all these different things, and I think they're all tests. And this is a live exercise, whether it's a live exercise or not. John Rappaport, investigative journalist, has said they're observing us, and I think we're ushering in communism. And I was speaking to someone today that said it's all one agenda. Don't be fooled. There's one agenda, and everyone's playing their part. And of course, that makes me feel that's really sad. And I watch President Trump very carefully, and I see how he's maligned. I was just watching Senator Chuck Schumer and Pelosi this morning, like, because he's saying not to be afraid, because he's saying let's go back to school, because he's saying this is going to go away, then they use it against him to just crap on him. And it's like, you're blaming him. How about these supposed experts, these doctors? Like, when was the last time you put a stethoscope on someone's chest, Fauci? I've found lawsuits against him, knowingly poisoning people in Florida for optics. Regarding Zika, I call him the pandemic impresario. Like, what? Anthrax, HIV, AIDS, SARS, H1N1, all of it, Zika, all under your 6 presidents. Like, it's time for you to just go away.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on, and I love the bridge you made there from COVID and Black Lives Matter to George Floyd, because I know you've done a lot of research on that, and I love the point you make about Black Lives Matter. Well, if that is the case, if that truly is the case of that Marxist organization, let's call it out for what it is. I'm using their own words. I'm not making this up or pulling this out of my backside. The co-founder, Patricia Cullors, has said they are a Marxist organization. Well, what I would love for them to do, if Black lives really matter to them and they are sold on that concept, take that message and go to every Planned Parenthood in the United States and march and protest out there, because that is where the Black lives aren't mattering, is those babies that are being killed at those facilities day after day after day. So if Black lives really matter and you are not a Marxist organization, even though you say you are, go to Planned Parenthood, protest, and peacefully protest outside there.
Yes, the number one demographic are Blacks that are getting, and it's. I do believe in choice. I don't think I've had an abortion, if that's TMI, but I didn't know that Planned Parenthood was selling the baby parts. I didn't know at the time that they used the babies as a substrate to grow their live viruses and then injected back into the baby. It's like, this is evil. What a sustainable model. And I just, I a couple of days ago, I'm like, okay, let me see what else I could find on Fauci, because I scrape archival footage, and I found him speaking about during the HIV/AIDS how circumcision, if you're circumcised, you're less likely to get HIV by snipping the foreskin. So then I play a sick rendition of Where's Waldo, but it's Where's Billy Boy Gates, and I'm like, let me see. I found Clinton Foundation, money going from Bill Gates to the Clinton Foundation for all these initiatives for snipping foreskin. And where? In Africa. And not only babies, adults. They even have saying that the Africans compared to the African Americans are more likely to get their foreskin snipped off, and then find out that they're making face cream that Oprah peddles to put on your face. You're putting foreskin face cream on your face. How? And then you're just like, I was speaking to someone and they're like, why is it all you conservatives bring up George Soros? I don't really care what George Soros does. He's a businessman.
Because he's the root of the flipping problem.
Yeah, but the fact that it's like they don't go below the surface. They just dub us conspiracy theorists, when if you really take a step back and you look at what they're doing with Planned Parenthood or circumcision or Blacks, then they're being used. That's like one of the reasons why I'm so I was going to say not food Nazi. I don't know if I could say that, because I refuse to let them put their poisons in me. And if I've reversed lupus and fibromyalgia and learned how to walk again, and if I can do it, then other people can. And it starts with food is thy medicine. Hippocrates is like rolling in his grave. And these Black Lives Matter because they bring them tons and tons and tons of money. That's why they matter.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's what it boils down to. And I think it's been proven that all of this money that is being funneled into a, again, Marxist organization, and watch, we'll be throttled down for talking about this, but all the money that Black Lives Matter that is being brought in is obviously being funneled to Act Blue, and that is being funneled all out to these Democrat politicians. You all know the names. We don't have to go over them again. So, the money is the root of the problem. And George Soros is also the root of the problem. He's the one that is funding all of this evil that is going on, not only here in the United States, Maryam, but around the world as well.
He just funded, what, 50 million to Biden? Was it? And then 50 million?
I believe he funded the re-election campaign of the rogue city prosecutor in St. Louis, Kim Garner, the one that tried to charge the older couple, the McCluskeys, for standing their ground and protecting their home and their gated community.
Yeah, it's really sad to not be able to have conversations. Just be like, oh, I bet you follow MAGA idiots. Well, let me tell you that when I went to AMP conference, was my first. I went with Zach, and I brought Mickey Willis, who did Plandemic, who's been a friend for more than a decade, and we went and we covered the event. That these people were the ones who were accepting and standing for our Constitution and peacefully. And then I went to I covered the gun rally with Zach, and I didn't know what to expect. And I was, as a 5'4" woman, I was afraid. We got helmets. I was afraid to go into the kill box and, to be surrounded by guns. And it's like today, it's like I would get a gun. Because I knew a long time ago, it's one thing to have reform, like police reform, fine. But it's different. Like, it was very obvious to me, yeah, they want to take away your guns so that when this happens, you don't have a way to protect yourself. It's like, it was obvious. Just like for me, it was obvious, and I got the message to leave America. And it's not because I'm a coward, but I need nature. And I realized that we're very disconnected from nature. I was living across the street from a Cinco Geo pole, and I can attest, even though it sounds like a tinfoil wearing that person, that it impacted me. It impacted my girlfriend, who's also sensitive and left Los Angeles. And, so here in the jungle, even though they are rolling out there was curfews, now they've opened the beaches to 2:30. So Rona decides to work after 2:30. Like, the path parallel to the beach is Rona free. Like, just like church is bad, Walmart is okay. And it's beyond me. And now we're creating this division, like the masked and the unmasked.
Yeah, it's interesting as this coronavirus, it was 15 days to stop the spread, 8 months ago. But funny how now it has a mind of its own, and it knows where to attach itself, where not to attach itself, what group of people to attach itself to, and what group of people not to attach itself to.
Yeah, I was talking to my mom today, and she's like, well, Mary, all I see is people are dying. And she had said, how could the whole world, I'm imitating my mom and her Egyptian accent, how could the whole world be fooling us? And then she paused, and she actually said, and how about Dr. Fauci? And, today again, I told her, yeah, people are dying, but can we look at, like, are they vented? Were they not given HCQ? Like, Zach just put his accountant's father, they didn't allow, he wasn't able to get HCQ. He's on a ventilator. I'm not saying all ventilated people will die. I know people who've been on a ventilator and have recovered, but they are still intubating you and creating and giving you, I call it a swirling miasma of different sedatives, and that's lending to it. And I found out that if you are on a vent, you can't get remdesivir, and remdesivir costs like $3,000 or $4,000. HCQ is a generic drug that costs less. And it's not my go-to HCQ, because I would take quinine, I would take Quercetin, I would put someone in an oxygen chamber, I would look at MMS, I would look at all the things that I'm being attacked for, because you can't even use the word prevention. Like, they came after me because I wrote an article, or someone else wrote an article on Honey Colony, that the best way to deal with the coronavirus is prevention. So, but I think that HCQ given early on, and if you really look, I mean, you really have to get detailed, which doctors don't. Like, oh, what genetic SNPs do you have? Oh, do you have sluggish liver phase 1? Then maybe HCQ is not good for you. You can't, like, Cuomo allowed it in late stages. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work in the late stages. So this is, again, I think, a soft culling. This is depopulation. This is what it looks like. Let's get rid of the old people.
Interesting that you went with some alternative medicines. Obviously, always check with a health provider, and the ones that you were talking about, I've not come across. So those are interesting. But before we go, I do want to touch on George Floyd a little. Yes, George a little bit, because I want to get your take on the new body cam footage that has been released here within the last 48 to 72 hours. I want to get your take on that as well.
So I've been saying for weeks, having read the transcripts, having looked at the autopsy report, by the way, folks, George Floyd said, "I can't breathe," while he was still in the car, and he asked to be put on the ground. Is it just a coincidence that Benjamin Crump represented Eric Garner, who also said, "I can't breathe"? Matt Taibbi, the journalist who wrote a book that "I Can't Breathe"? Bridget, who the day after her supposed brother died had "I Can't Breathe"? Like, oh, print shops are essential? Who's FedExed you that T-shirt that you're wearing? So the body cam footage, one, this has been tried in the media. I'm just about to post a request to remove the case from Hennepin County, which I think is full of effery. Keith Ellison, who's corrupt, Jacob Fry, they have all called him a murderer. Regardless of what happened, I believe in innocent until proven guilty. So this body cam footage fell in the laps of the Daily Mail. It just so happens that Martin Gould, I worked for him when he worked for In Touch, because I used to leak Hollywood shit to People magazine, to In Touch, to what I call dirty magazines. And I spoke to him, and this fell in his lap, and I had a conversation with him, and I said, like, isn't it weird the light doesn't change for an hour? Isn't it weird that they didn't ventilate, they didn't give him CPR there? Isn't it weird that Michael Baden, who's not really the independent medical examiner, didn't run a toxicology report, doesn't want to acknowledge that this guy had other comorbidities, was arguably high as a kite? And of course, the clincher, which we were joking, Zach and I, watch, he's going to have coronavirus. Oh, he has coronavirus. Really? What's that story? Who issued the test for him to get the Rona test? Was it his employers? Were they under quarantine? I also did an interview the day after with Giovanni Landstrom, the owner of the Latin Bistro, and you can tell that this stuff that he tells me is not matching up with what later comes up. They're a little confused with their narrative, because initially they were saying they don't know one another, that, oh, just because they worked at the same place doesn't mean that they knew each other. But then I just sent the information to the Daily Mail journalist, like, look at this clip. Benjamin Crump is saying that it's going to be a central part. So this is kind of like Eric Garner. Well, there's so much confusion that let's see what happens. Let's see really what happens. This could arguably Derek Chauvin. There's also a 2006 case against him and other Minneapolis Police Department officers. It was an inmate, a Black inmate, that filed it. But because he didn't have $340, the case was dismissed. And under the coronavirus, I've been waiting now for more than 2 months to get a hold of just to see what that case is about. So there's so much I could say about that. But regarding the body cam footage, the guy was having a panic attack. He was freaking out. I'm not at all justifying that it's okay to kill someone, but I don't think it's about race. I really don't.
Well, yeah, after watching that and being in law enforcement as I am for 15 years now, I do have a couple questions. Watching that, one, when the officer comes up to the van that George was in, I don't see in my, again, and this is just my personal professional opinion,
yes,
a reason why
he would have a gun.
That officer rather had well, at first, why he had to pull a gun, because there was no from the driver in the car. So yeah. But before that, I don't see a reason. And again, unless there was,
you're cutting out a little.
The
volume is cutting out. I don't know if it's me. Can you hear me?
Oh no, it's my internet connection goes unstable at times.
Okay, tell me again.
Yeah, you're fine. It's my internet. He had to knock on the window again, unless he had a taillight or something out. I didn't see anything that caused an issue for.
Yeah, it's really unstable, Derek. I'm not hearing you. Speak. Can you hear me?
Oh, I was listening. I was just listening to you. My internet from time to time goes unstable. Yeah. That's why I was kicking in and out. But then the officer had to straight go to his weapon, like you mentioned, and I didn't see a reason for that either, because in my opinion, and it's later shown that George did not have a weapon on him at all. So why were you so quick as to pull your weapon on somebody that did not have a weapon?
Right. And also I could be having a counterfeit Twixie and not know it. And also the way he reacts, George Floyd, it's a little bit over the top. And unfortunately, because it's caught on camera, people just automatically believe it. It looks like a episode of Cops. It's all a little bit strange. Like, did you know that Darnella Frazier, the 17, there was a minor who covered it from, I think, she has raised $500,000 on GoFundMe, which is a Ponzi scheme associated with Big Pharma. $500,000. Hello. And she says she has nothing to do with the GoFundMe. And then the ambassador says that she's doing it with the mother. Where is that money going? Why don't people ask that? That's a little bit bizarre. So I think, I don't know. I don't know. It's not race. Maybe it's a dirty cop. Also, I want to just say, for me, if you've seen the Ozarks, it's like the Ozarks on coronavirus, because on January 20th, you can still hear me? On January 27th, the Minneapolis state received $900,000 in $1 counterfeit bills made in China, as Wuhan is closing down for the biggest quarantine in history. So we can say there might be a little bit of a counterfeit problem. So when you have everything is an animated suspension, you don't have your legitimate operations, what happens? Maybe he was using some bills. You see it shoved. I put it in Patriot Soapbox, the bills that were shoved in between the seats for Courtney to say this is her fiance, supposedly the most spiritual man. Please spare me. Then I look to see, okay, I want to know, how close is Hennepin County that burned down the evidence room to El Nuevo, to La Raza? Wow, 2 minutes. Omar Sabri, who owns all this property because Maya is the real owner of El Nuevo, 8 minutes away. Oh, how convenient. We burnt everything down. No one says that's a little bit bizarre? I think it's a little bit bizarre.
Yeah, you're exactly right over the target, and there's no such thing as coincidences, and these people think that these Americans don't pay attention and don't connect the dots. Well, unfortunately, I'm sorry to tell you that there are a few around here that do connect the dots, and Maryam is one of the greatest at that. Maryam, if people want to get a hold of you on Twitter or on social media, when obviously you're not being censored, where can they find you at?
Yeah, please buzz on over. I don't know if you're putting links, but I say that I work for retweets. And I just put up a Patreon page because I am working for God, and I'm relentless. And I just need support just to cover my interviews on YouTube. I'm interviewing a whole bunch of different people. Like I'm going to be releasing an interview I did with Ryan Hartwig, the Facebook whistleblower. So on YouTube, it's Maryam Henein, B Lady, and Maryam Henein on Twitter. So I have lots of like little nuggets, archival footage, links, studies on there. And then I'm writing for Patriot Soapbox. And then they can buzz on over to honeycolony.com if they are interested in natural remedies that are being persecuted, and simplytransformative.com, which is where I sell organic liposomal CBD since 2016, long before Kim Kardashian and Martha Stewart. So
I see the terminology you're using when you say buzz on over. I see what you're doing there. But Maryam, again, thank you for joining us. We're definitely going to be able to have you back, and we'll get into some more discussions into your investigative journalism that journalists today just don't do. But again, Maryam, thank you for coming on, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, thank you. Blessings, everyone. Thank you.